All right, Blake Capps.
Good to be with you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You are running for county commission.
Martin County Commissioner, District 3, which is the southern part of the county.
Okay.
Which encompasses mainly Hobe Sound and what we call South County, which is the Tequesta area. Northern Tequesta that is part of District 3. That many people in Martin County are not even really aware of the fact that there's quite a number of Martin County residents that live down there by County Line Road and in those communities back there.
Why are you running?
Well, I am.
You have a perfectly good life.
Yes.
Why would you put yourself into this kind of a headache situation? I always ask this to people.
Well, good.
You have to be galvanized. Something had to happen. What's your story for why you're doing it?
I appreciate it. I am 60 years old. I've lived in Hobe Sound for 47 years. We moved to Hobe Sound when I was 13. And I met my wife in Hobe Sound of 38 years. I've raised 3 great kids in Hobe Sound who still live in Hobe Sound, 2 miles up the road from my home. I have run a business in Hobe Sound for 31 years, serving all of Martin County and several other counties in the surrounding area.
Keeping everybody dry, keeping
keeping
roofs on.
Yep, and it's a great joy of ours to be able to serve so many people who need help. So it's been a great thing. My church is in Martin County. Most of my friends are in Martin County. So everything I hold close is on Martin County soil. Martin County means everything to me, and it's time for me to give back in public service and to make a difference in public service.
You'd like to have some input on the decisions that are made.
Yes, yes.
Which my instinct would be that maybe you were not happy with some of the decisions that were being made.
Right. That is true.
Do you mind going into the history that you have in public service, because you've served on the LPA?
Yes.
Kind of going into that so people get a sense of who you are and that you have experience in this.
Right. Well, I started on the Hobe Sound Neighborhood Advisory Committee.
Mm-hmm.
I served 4 of the last 5 years on that committee, and then I became the chair of that, which puts you on the CRA board. And I served on the CRA board for 2 years, and then I served on the local planning agency for 1 year.
And who appointed you?
Harold Jenkins, the sitting commissioner for District 3.
Yep.
And in early 2023.
So you were appointed in early 2023.
Yes.
And then how long were you on the LPA?
About 8 or 9 months.
Okay.
I think in October is when I got rotated off of the LPA.
Well, people may not know this, but that's kind of unusual, right?
Yes.
At least in the city, and I'm sure it's the same way in the county. If you appoint somebody, they will at least serve a year, and often multiple years.
Right.
So what happened that you did you quit? Were you removed? And what was the context around,
I was removed by Commissioner Harold Jenkins. Yes, basically it all revolved around the new concept called rural lifestyle in western Martin County, which is a new amendment in the comp plan that was approved during the Discovery Land hearings. The exclusive development that's being built on Bridge Road in western Hobe Sound.
And why would he remove you relative to?
Well, he's a big believer in the concept of rural lifestyle, which enables developers to take their density on a large agricultural property into what they call cluster the houses, like into one little portion. And instead of building their houses on 20-acre lots, you can build them on 1-acre lots or 5-acre lots, and to have a little cluster community and maybe a big golf course.
Exactly.
And which is what is happening at Discovery Lands. And that was the first parcel that rural lifestyle applied to, and it was passed by the commission. And Commissioner Jenkins really believes in the concept. And so it was passed with the Discovery Land hearings, and that was before I was on the LPA. And then the issue got applied to the next development called Three Lakes. which is 2 large golf courses, and Western Hope Sound, right at the intersection of Canner Highway and Bridge Road.
Mm-hmm.
And the question was whether to apply rural lifestyle to that parcel as well. And I made the argument at the LPA meeting that perhaps we're going too fast with this. You know, this is a very controversial amendment, one that could have a lot of unintended consequences. We don't really know how this is going to go over in Martin County. Why are we moving so quickly to apply it to a second parcel? So I ended up voting no on it.
Was it 4-1 or 3-2 or
3-2?
Yeah, 3-2.
Right. And a few days later, I got a call from Commissioner Jenkins, and it sounded like there were people in his background that were kind of upset with what was going on the LPA. And he said, I think I'm going to have to ask you to step down. I feel like rural lifestyle is a really big thing for me. And he said, we need to have a symbiotic relationship on this issue. And I said, well, you've never been interested in controlling my votes in the past. We're just an advisory board. You guys can do whatever you want to do.
Right.
What's the big deal?
No, you were clearly ruffling too many feathers by being a think for yourselfer up there, huh?
Right.
Which, yeah.
So,
crazy.
He ended up rotating me off, and that was the end of it. But I really enjoyed serving on the LPA, and perhaps I would still be on it and not be running for office right now. But
if you just towed the line, Blake, can't just toe the line, huh?
Right.
Well, good for you, man.
Well,
good for you for thinking critically about a project and asking questions and trying to be reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially in light of a lot of backlash from the constituency that, we're all supposed to represent. Maybe let's slow down a second. What are the implications long term? And can we talk about it? Because, that's like your job is your advisory board.
Right.
We're supposed to be considering these things.
Right.
If we don't, nobody does.
Exactly.
Wow. So I think that is a very important point for people who may not know who you are, is that you have experience in this world of advisory boards and government, and not that it gets into camps of slow growth or pro growth or whatever, but at least that you were reasonable and asking questions, which I would argue is desperately needed, is more of that. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure. I also serve on the Metropolitan Planning Organization Citizens Advisory Committee. So I'm also on that.
For people who don't know what that is.
Right. Basically, that has a lot to do with roads and infrastructure, planning for the future, the 1 year, the 5 year, the 20-year plan.
Yep.
And
which, again, is really important that you're involved in that already, because if you do win, you would be on the MPO as a commissioner.
Right.
So to have that history and understanding going in, it's very nice. You're not a novice. You're not trying to figure out where you are like I was 2 years ago.
It's pretty dry subject matter, but I actually enjoy it. I there are always some interesting parts to it.
Well, that's what we need. We need the guys who have been working for a while and know how to run businesses involved in government.
Well, thank you. If you
can run a successful business for many years, you should have some insight.
Right. I think business is critical and needed for people in public office. When you've run a small business for 31 years and you have to manage your money well and sell the jobs, execute the jobs, and still make a profit, make it all worth it. You learn a lot about efficiencies and stretching dollars. So I think...
So what I'm hearing... What I'm hearing from you is maybe you'd run a little tighter ship on the budget.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I would like to have that as a stated goal to
not raise taxes.
To not raise taxes. Yes.
Okay.
That is a stated goal. I realize that things can get really strange in county government since we have a tax system that is based upon the property values of homes. And I always try to remember 2008 when property values were slashed in half. And that can get really wonky, you know, how to deal with the millage rate in a crisis like that and to keep the county government going. But certainly if you have a stated goal of not raising the millage and you have the background to find efficiencies, you know, I think we can get there. But,
it just seems like we spend so much money. Yes, indeed. You know, as the property values increase and there's more money coming into the coffers, it just seems like we're hiring. There's FRS going out. It's just a lot of money. Yeah,
that is so true.
And assuming that everything is cyclical, why not run a tighter ship always, smaller government?
Right.
And, you know, if anything, lower the millage if possible. Certainly don't spend more and raise taxes. Right. It's a bad sign.
Yep. And we need to tighten our belts and live within our means. You know, that's what we have to do in business.
What do you think was behind the latest tax increase that happened with the county?
Right. Well, that got tough, mainly because of a commitment that was made to public service or public safety. You know, the sheriff's department and the fire department, and the commissioners got themselves in a tight spot where there wasn't a whole lot of money left, and the county commission
to slash capital improvement projects.
Right. Yeah. What gets strange in county government is that the state legislature has put these supermajority requirement votes in place. If you want to raise taxes just a little bit, you can do it with a 3-2 vote. If you want to raise taxes kind of a moderate amount, you need a 4-1 vote. And if you want to raise taxes a good bit, you need a 5-0 vote. So in the final moments of budget negotiations, the commissioners can get in a tight spot. Like if they've committed too much to one category, there's not a whole lot left, especially when they have one or two commissioners who are peeling off and saying, I'm not going to vote for that. They get in a really tight spot. And I think that's where they found themselves this last budget cycle, where there wasn't a whole lot of money left after the sheriff and the fire department got their increases.
I've said this to several different people that are running, but my take on it is the brand of Martin County politics is sort of threefold. You don't raise taxes, clean water, right? And then slow growth.
Right.
Reasonable, responsible growth, measured.
I think those are the primary issues.
You're not Port St. Lucie. You're not West Palm Beach. What defines you and makes you different is something like that.
Yep.
And it seems like some of that has been under attack or maybe lost sight of more recently.
Right.
You know?
Right. No doubt.
So how would you, I know you're running for a seat, not against a person, right? But how would you characterize, if I'm buying you as a product, how you are unique versus Susan Gibbs, assuming nobody else puts in paperwork, it's just you two, right? Right.
Well, there's a third guy who's currently in the race named Frank D'Ambra. Okay. He seems to be a really nice guy. I've bumped into him a couple times. And he seems to be well-spoken. But he's new to the community. He moved to Martin County late last year. And there aren't a lot of people that know him, but, we'll see. We'll see how he does and whether he, qualifies by Friday evening, which is the cutoff for qualifying this week.
How would you, how would you characterize how you are different from Susan, who's also running?
Well, I would say the most important thing for me is what I would call preserving the Martin County difference. And the way I would do that is to uphold the comprehensive plan. We have a good comprehensive plan.
God, it's so nice to hear that.
Right. which has done us very well for over 40 years.
Right.
And why do we all want to live here? You know, why do we love Martin County? Why is it so different? And what is the urgency to dismantle that, you know, and to change that fundamentally? I think upholding the comp plan is central, and central to that is slowing down the amendment process. You know, most of what gets built and developed in Martin County, it was with a comprehensive plan amendment. Most of these yellow signs that you see all over the place, it says comp plan amendment on it.
So it's not.
And if you look at the agenda
yeah.
For county commission meetings, there are lists of comp plan amendments. You know, why is it always being amended and changed? You know, so we need to slow down the amendment process, you know.
And how do you think we got into this mess where we're doing, I'll categorize it as a mess, but these amendments? I mean, why, what happened? Why is there so much push to go in this direction?
I think, this is what I think happens with a parcel of land. You have some old fella that bought a piece of land 30 years ago for $1 million. And, you know, 10 years later, somebody comes along and says, well, hey, you know, we have a more pro-growth minded commission right now. I'll give you $5 million for that piece. And so he gives him $5 million and he cashes out. And then 5 or 10 years more go by, and some other developer from Orlando comes in and says, well, you know, we've run the numbers. We've built a community up here in Orlando just like this. We have figured the numbers out to where we can offer you $10 million for that parcel of land.
Right.
You know, you'll laugh all the way to the bank, and we'll still make out because we believe that we can convince the commissioners to give a significant density increase that will enable us to still make a profit, even though we're paying you an exorbitant amount of money for the land. And that's kind of what fuels comp plan amendments and density increases, is developers who are paying too much for property, I think.
Under the pretense that they'll be able to get whatever they ultimately want.
Right. Because it worked in some other part of Florida that's not like Martin County.
Right.
Where we really value, you know, open spaces and reasonable densities. You know, other communities are more pro-growth, and they've run the numbers. And these are out-of-town developers, you know, that have been building in other parts of the state. They know their numbers, and they know they can give a ton of money for these parcels of land.
And if the people who are on that board, that dais, don't hold the line,
right?
If they're not the guardians of that Martin County difference,
right,
for whatever reason,
right,
then why not? Like, we'll find a way to make it happen. We'll get your project through.
Right.
Don't you worry.
Right. Right. And that's why it ends up happening, I think.
I think there's a lot of conversation about property rights. You know, anytime I kind of hear the two different camps, that the pro, you know, growth group is, well, property rights, you know, and my pushback is, well, what about the property rights? What about the quality of life of the people who have been invested?
Right.
Not the Orlando developer who is paying $10 million, but what about all the surrounding properties and the increase in the traffic or whatever? And that, how that impacts the people who bought here and invested in here.
Right.
This is, who cares?
Right. I think, you know, what you have a right to with your property is the land use and the zoning that you bought. You know,
as defined by the land use, you know.
You know, when you bought the property, it was zoned this, and it was, the land use was this, and that's your property rights, you know.
Right.
And a lot of times developers will sort of cast it as if a density increase is somehow a property right.
Right.
It's not a right. It's a gift, really.
Right.
You know, so
we called it conditional use for a long time,
Yeah.
but it is beyond
Right.
what that property is zoned for.
Right.
If we're terraforming what it is now
Mm-hmm.
to make it more profitable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I tried to bait you a little bit with regard to, how you see Susan potentially as different from you.
Right.
Like
Right.
if somebody's trying to compare
Right.
apples to apples, and
Mm-hmm.
you would say you're dedicated to the Martin County difference.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Right. As far as contrasts go, I haven't had a lot of dialogue with Susan Gibbs Thomas. I think, but I've made some observations. She has served on the Town Council of Indiantown since, I believe, 2017, which is when
booming.
Indiantown became a town.
Right.
So, and I know that Indiantown is getting ready to double in size in just a couple of years. They're breaking ground right now on a 2,500 house development called Terra Largo. And she approved it. She's behind it. I know that. That's a massive amount of development. I've often thought, what community in Martin County is even close to that size? And I don't know of any. I've worked in these communities and these neighborhoods for 31 years in my company, and I used to do all the estimates myself, so I used to drive around this county a lot, and I don't think there are any developments where there are even 1,000 houses in one single development in Martin County. But 2,500 is a gigantic place, so that's a lot of density, a lot of developments on over 800 acres of land. So I would tend to wonder, if she has approved that in Indiantown, what would be her mindset about development in the county at large,
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing that would play into that issue and cause us to wonder about how she would vote on issues would be our financial reports just came out for the last fundraising quarter.
Who's been donating to your campaigns, right?
Right.
What did hers
And
look like?
her list has long strings of $1,000 donations from people from other states. And they're not just people from outside of our county. They're from out of Florida. These are New Jersey people and Illinois people, and
Which you don't want to speculate too much, but who's doing that? That's developers, right?
I would wonder if that's developers and friends of developers.
Right.
But that's something it's public record. Everyone's going to be seeing that soon. So and I would it would also make me wonder, how would she vote going forward countywide? When she gets a seat on the county commission. What's Martin County going to look like with her votes?
Yep. And in light of Harold
Mm-hmm.
taking you off the LPA
Mm-hmm.
because you said no,
Mm-hmm.
There's more context there for why
Mm-hmm.
she was anointed as his successor,
Mm-hmm.
versus the guy that was his LPA appointee.
Right.
If that's the case.
Right.
That's interesting. So that's it right there, man. I appreciate that you're running.
Well, thank you.
There's not enough guys like you that have been successful in business, have successful families, have wisdom, have character and integrity, that want anything to do with local politics or, maybe an advisory board, maybe, but I don't want that spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's lovely for me. These are the years I want to enjoy what I've built, enjoy my grandkids, and yet you are taking that, those slings and arrows, I'm sure already, and trying to bring that decision making and wisdom into the commission. So I appreciate. I wish there was more of you.
Well, thank you.
In various districts, you to me represent the closest thing, to what I'd like to see in all people coming up through the various, boroughs of Jensen and everything. But
well, thank you.
Yeah, just a normal, hardworking, qualified person that wants to preserve what's left.
Well, thank you.
Of our home.
Good.
Not just use these seats for sort of selfish gain. You don't need to gain anything else. If anything, it's going to be a headache, like I said. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. What else do you think is relevant with regard to your campaign, your platform, what you'd like to, how people could get to know you?
Okay.
It's kind of open-ended, but.
Right. We've talked about preserving the Martin County difference.
Yes,
and
sir.
We've talked a little bit about holding the line on taxes. And I would say the other one is improving the water quality in our rivers, our 3 awesome rivers. And we have 3 of them. Many people forget about the Loxahatchee River down in our neck of the woods.
That's right.
And which is starved for fresh water. That's the problem in the Loxahatchee.
Don't tell the Army Corps; they'll give you plenty of it.
And then we have the Indian River and the St. Lucie River up this way. And what can we do on the county level and on the city level where you serve to improve water quality? One little county and one little city is not going to fix the whole problem, but we can set the example, and we can make a contribution to improving the water quality in our rivers. And we do that by buying conservation lands and storing water, cleaning water before it's returned to the river. And we do that also by septic to sewer, improving that as well. And, and those commitments would be strong on my platform, and those would be things I would be looking to accomplish as a commissioner as well.
So I think that's awesome. Having the county maybe more proactively encouraging South Florida Water Management District, who's in charge of the quality of the water. You got the Corps, who's all about quantity, where it's going, but South Florida Water Management District, and sort of asking them to hold polluters accountable and make sure these B maps are clean and doing what they should be doing.
Advocacy, on the local level to the state.
I would love to see that from
government.
the county as well.
Yeah.
You've got really qualified people in the county, John Mayle and some of these people that are around the environmental protection.
Right. Impressive guy. Yeah.
But having more of a driving,
Right.
Because the county is a little more complicated than the city in terms of who, it's a larger geographic area that encompasses, you have the beaches, but you also have ag land, right? The city's just the river.
Right.
If the water quality is bad, we have a problem for all the homeowners on the river and the people that are trying to fish or use it recreationally. But the county, there's competing interests across,
Yeah.
So sometimes that competition can, hamstring things a little bit.
Yep.
So it would be nice to have
Well, thank you.
a little more gas. Not that they're doing a good job, but one more advocate on that board saying, hey, let's clean things up.
Super.
That'd be awesome.
Wow.
So I would say if I had to categorize the main issue most people, beyond taxes would be the thing that irritates a lot of people is traffic.
Yeah.
That's people are just trying to get to the store.
Yeah. I was amazed at the feeling of it when I was coming up here. Hope Sound is a little different where I live because Hope Sound has a lot of preserved land around it, and it's a smaller town, and traffic is not as bad.
A little bit insulated.
Right. But, for years, we had to drive 10 miles for everything. You either had to come north or go south, 10 miles for everything. When I was a kid, we had to come to Bob's Barbershop in Port Salerno to get a haircut because there were no barbershops in Hobe Sound.
There's worse things.
And we have a few restaurants now and a few places to get your haircut. But, you know, traffic doesn't affect my life every day like it does the people up this way.
Yes,
and boy, do I feel it when I'm here, you know. What a contrast.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep.
Well, let's see here. We're at 30 minutes. Anything else?
I think I'm good if you are.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. I selfishly hope you win.
Well, thank you.
Susan's nice,
Mm-hmm.
but I do agree with you that it does seem like you are 100% squared up, head in the right direction, and have a track record to prove that
Mhm.
you will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had to know when you voted no, you were going to face scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
Probably didn't think that Harold was going to remove you,
Right, right.
but you probably thought you'd get a talking to anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't
But
really
to have
know
the character
for
to
sure,
say
but I certainly didn't expect to be thrown off. You know, so
But to have the character to face that anyway,
yeah,
And,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
and say it's pretty great, you know. I guess a question I wanted to ask you was related to story,
Mm-hmm.
because that's brewing,
Mm-hmm.
right? That story project.
Yes.
What do you think about it?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
What's your understanding of it?
that would be one of the most impactful, in a negative way,
For people who don't know, they just got the
Right.
beautiful pamphlet
Right.
that somehow makes it seem like Brian Mast and Jackie Lippish are
Mm.
associated with it, and that was very weird.
Right.
Until you read at the very bottom, it's like these people are not. It's like
Right. Right.
River
You know,
Kids
that-
endorse story.
You know, I keep trying to figure out what the strategy is there
Right.
with their public relations, because they don't have a right now to do what they are purporting to do. And for many people who don't know where it is,
Do you mind giving the context of this whole thing for
Sure.
people who have no idea?
Sure, yeah. I call it the four-way stop. If you go out Bridge Road and you come to the intersection of Pratt and Whitney Road, there's a four-way stop. And there are cow fields on four corners. And most people are familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, the same developer owns all four quadrants. And he wants to put 5,000 houses there and to build a town or a city with 5,000 houses without the roads and infrastructure really to do that on Bridge Road and on Cove Road and on Canner Highway. The infrastructure is not there for that. Well, the big deal is Story is in what we call the agricultural area. Martin County has an urban services boundary, a little squiggly line that runs up through the middle of the county. The urban area is to the east. The ag lands are to the west. And most of western Martin County is zoned 20-acre lots. That's why it's still green, and that's why it's mainly cow fields and ag and a few sparse houses here and there. Well, Story is in the ag lands. They don't have the land use or the zoning to do what they want to do, and they've come after the county 2 or 3 times in the past to get that changed, but it would require the movement of the urban services boundary, which is like violating commandment number 1 and and the 10 Commandments. That's a big deal in Martin County government to move the urban services boundary. He would need to do that to build out what he wants done. And that's a big decision that will probably come up in the next few years, maybe in the next year.
Yeah, I'd imagine they're spending a lot of money to market it.
Right. It would be disastrous for my town of Hope Sound, I do believe. The amount of traffic coming into Hope Sound on Bridge Road.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably ultimately result in the 4-laning of Bridge Road, which would be a kind of a domino effect that could, one day turn us into Indiantown Road or something like that, which, would really jam Bridge Road and jam our little roads in Hope Sound, and none of us would be able to find a parking spot at the beach, which would not be good. Because that's the main reason you live in Hope Sound, right? Close beach access.
True.
That's our we have 2 aces in the hole in Hobe Sound. The reasons you live in Hobe Sound are close beach access and the preserve lands. You know, J.D. Park, Atlantic Ridge State Park, Hobe Sound National Wildlife Refuge. If you like trails and walking in the trails, that's pretty cool in Hobe Sound as well. But if it weren't for those things, you know, downtown Stuart is quite lovely.
There's something about that white sugar sand, Hobe Sound sugar sand.
Yeah, it is. It is very different, and it's sort of like hilly too.
Yes.
You know, there are parts of Jensen Beach that are kind of like that as well.
Skyline.
You know, yeah, which are really unique coastal terrain.
Yeah. Do you have any opinion on that Newfield project in Palm City?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you were following that.
Yeah,
I know. To me, that's what Story feels like.
Right.
Well, can we have that too?
Right. And Story would be even bigger than Newfield, as I understand it. Newfield's about 4,000 houses, I do believe.
Yeah, 4,200 doors.
Right. And it's a similar situation. Story would be another town.
Yes, it would.
And what I would urge Martin County residents to think about when it comes to growth in the western part of our county, you know, if you're concerned about growth now, we got quite a bit that's coming that's already approved. Newfield's 4,000 houses.
That's 12,000 people, man.
And
the way they have it set up.
Right. And then Indiantown, you know, is getting ready to be 2,500 houses. So you're talking, you know, 5,000 or 6,000 new people there. So, you know, let's slow this thing down. Let's see how this rolls out, you know, how we're all feeling about this thing before we
approve anymore.
Yeah, go you know, just going willy-nilly, you know, sort of you know, cutting loose, you know, with a lot more, because there's going to be some big impacts just from those two things.
It's true. And everything flows through the city of Stuart ultimately.
Right.
The way the bridges are set up,
yeah,
you know, to go north or south, you need to go right through that tip of the peninsula.
Right.
You know, over the Roosevelt.
Yep.
So it just turns US 1 into a parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Which makes me crazy. When I've brought it up at the NPO, I had kind of a meltdown one day. Is they dragged these guys out. You know, they dragged the DOT. The guy comes out. You know, they're nice, man. They're super professional. You know, they're doing their job. And then, sort of one by one, various commissioners take turns abusing them for why this project is taking so long, or, you know, whatever, why it's not funded yet. How do we get this going? We got to work this. And finally, I just snapped, and it's like, listen, these guys over here didn't approve 4,200 doors in Palm City, Doug. And him and I are going back and forth. Well, you know, we didn't approve all those apartments. It's like, what about Story? You know, at what point is anybody going to take responsibility for how could the DOT? I mean, you'd have to have flyaway bridges over roads to deal with the traffic that you're creating by totally terraforming the land use through amendments of, you know, instead of cows, it's a bunch of humans now in cars, and everybody's going to come through. And then Port St. Lucie's doing what it's doing, you know, West Palm and Jupiter. And can we be special?
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Would the world end if
Exactly.
that didn't have to be that level of density there?
Right.
And it just could be ag land.
That's our history. You know, that's our legacy. That's the Martin County difference.
Right.
You know, when I think of the Martin County difference,
do you know these people have kids? I can't figure out what's going on.
Right. You know, when I think of the Martin County difference, I always think of two great visuals. The first one is you've just landed at Palm Beach International Airport and you're coming home to Martin County on I-95, and you come through Jupiter.
Yep.
And you see the little green sign on the right-hand side that says, "Welcome to Martin County."
And it totally changes.
And you breathe a sigh of relief, and you look to the east and to the west, and you feel like you're in a different world.
Yep.
And you are. And you see thousands of acres of native Florida. And then you come up on into Stewart and turn right on East Ocean Boulevard, and you're heading toward Hutchinson Island.
Mm-hmm.
And you get up on top of those two great bridges, the Ernest Lyons Bridge and the Evans Curry Bridge. And you look to the south at Sailfish Point, at those buildings 4 stories or less.
Yes, sir.
And then you look to the north at the northern end of Hutchinson Island, and you see 30-story condominium buildings, one right after another. And you realize once again, wow, we live in a very different kind of place. And that's the Martin County difference.
And that doesn't happen on accident.
Exactly.
It doesn't just, nobody just shook the dice and that just happened. It took people holding the line and making decisions for the long-term brand of this place.
Yep.
And what are we doing?
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah, those are 2 great examples, man.
Well, thanks.
Going over that bridge, and it's true. And if you're on the beach, if you go to the beach a lot, I don't go up there much, but I'd imagine, as soon as that sun starts to get past that building, now you're in shade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The sun is blocked, and you've got 30 stories instead of out by where I like to be. It's houses.
Yep. Yep.
It's a totally different world, man.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much.
I won't keep you. I'm sure you're busy.
It's been a great privilege to be here and to speak to your audience.
Yep. Well, I hope you keep getting the word out so people hear about your platform.
Well, thank you.
Be aggressive.
Well, thank you.
What is a campaign? It's war. And I don't know if I can help you at all, man. Let me know.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
All right.